family, right. It can get messy.
Oh, yeah.
But could you imagine if every fight, every little disagreement ended up as material for a hit song?
Ooh, that's rough.
Well, that's kind of the reality Debbie Nelson lived with. You know her, right? Eminem's mom.
Yeah, I remember hearing about her.
She recently passed away, December 2nd. 69 years old.
Wow, that's young.
I know. It makes you think about their whole story, all that back and forth played out in the public eye.
And his music definitely didn't shy away from their issues.
Exactly.
All right.
Today, we're going to deep dive into all of that. We've got the article about her passing, some of those intense Eminem lyrics,
Okay, yeah.
but the really fascinating stuff. Excerpts from Debbie's 2008 memoir, My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem.
So we're getting her perspective.
Straight from the source.
Yeah.
Buckle up because this is going to get complicated.
I bet.
So the article is pretty straightforward. Confirms she passed in Missouri. Complications from lung cancer. Yeah. And there were already reports back in September that she was terminally ill. But what hits me hard every time are those lyrics from Cleaning Out My Closet.
Which ones specifically?
The part where he says, I'm sorry, Mama. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to make you cry. But tonight I'm cleaning out my closet.
Oh, yeah. Powerful stuff.
It's raw.
Definitely.
And it's just a tiny glimpse into their whole relationship.
You're telling me his music is full of it. I mean, that's got to be tough, having your personal life, your struggles, all laid out like that.
There's a whole world to analyze.
Absolutely. And judge.
Which is why Debbie's memoir is so fascinating. It's like, okay, Eminem said his piece. Now it's her turn to set the record straight.
To give us her side of the story.
Right. Because with public figures, it's easy to get caught up in one narrative.
Yeah, there are always so many different versions floating around.
Exactly. And in her book, Debbie doesn't hold back. She claims that Eminem, maybe stretched the truth a bit.
Exaggerated.
Or even completely fabricated stories about her.
To make his music more impactful.
She says it was all for shock value and to sell records.
Interesting. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where does artistic license end and real life begin?
Right. Like how much is performance and how much is genuine pain?
Exactly.
And remember that lawsuit she filed against him back in 2000?
The defamation case.
Yep. She was suing him for, what was it, $10 million?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that. The celebrity defamation lawsuits are always so messy.
Totally. Trying to untangle what's true and what's artistic expression is, it's like walking on eggshells.
Sure.
But what's even crazier, Debbie actually explains why she filed that lawsuit in her book.
She does.
She says it wasn't about getting back at her son.
It wasn't.
Nope. She needed the money. Her house was about to be foreclosed on.
Whoa. Okay, that puts a whole new spin on things.
Right. Makes you think about forgiveness and reconciliation, what that even means when everything's so public and messy.
And with family, it's never simple,
Never. And Debbie, she really tries to explain all that in her book. She even talks about her parenting, how there might have been some mistakes made.
So she owns up to some things.
She does. She even says, if I made one mistake as a mother, it was giving in to my eldest son's every whim. And remember, Eminem's dad wasn't around.
Right.
So she's basically saying, I was trying to compensate for that. I was doing the best I could as a single mom.
It's got to be hard. Especially when you're struggling. Like, society puts so much pressure on single parents, and then to have your kid basically call you out in his music.
That's gotta sting.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially when you're hurting, it's easier to blame someone else than to look inward.
For sure. But Debbie, she doesn't just say she made some mistakes. She goes even further. She accuses Eminem and the people around him of straight up lying about her.
Really?
Yeah. She saw the whole narrative, the one Eminem put out in his music, as this distorted version of the truth.
And the book is her attempt to correct that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She wanted to reclaim her story in her own words.
It's a good reminder that memories are subjective.
100%.
Two people can experience the same thing, but remember it completely differently.
Which is probably what was happening here, right? I mean, they both lived through the same events.
But their interpretations, the way they processed it all, could be totally different.
Makes you wonder who to believe.
Right.
And speaking of different perspectives, there's this one part in the book that really stood out to me. Debbie talks about this time when, Eminem, in his song My Name Is, talks about being bullied as a kid.
Yeah, I remember that song.
Right. It's this whole thing about getting beat up and stuffed in lockers. Pretty intense. But in her memoir, Debbie paints a different picture.
What does she say happened?
Well, according to her, Eminem was a bit of a troublemaker himself. She says he actually started a lot of the fights he got into.
Interesting.
And she claims he wasn't getting picked on as much as he let on.
Huh. So who's telling the truth?
It's hard to say for sure. It's like that old saying, there are two sides to every story.
And then the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
Yeah.
You've got these two conflicting accounts of the same events, and it's up to us as readers or listeners to kind of sift through it all and make our own judgments.
It's like a puzzle, right? Trying to piece together the truth from all these different perspectives.
Exactly. And then there's another example. It's a big one, the whole drug thing.
Oh, yeah. That was a huge part of his music.
Right. Eminem constantly raps about his struggles with addiction, specifically his mom's alleged Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Which is a really serious accusation.
Right. It's basically saying that she was making him sick on purpose to get attention.
Heavy stuff.
But in her book, Debbie completely denies it. She said she never gave Eminem any unnecessary medication.
She says it's completely made up.
Yeah. She claims that Eminem is twisting the truth to fit this narrative of him being a victim.
Wow.
It's pretty shocking when you read it.
I can imagine.
She even goes into detail about specific incidents, like one time when Eminem had pneumonia as a kid.
Okay. Yeah.
He talks about it in his music, right? How she was over-medicating him, making him feel worse.
Right. I remember that.
But Debbie says that's not what happened at all. She claims she was just following doctor's orders, giving him the medicine he needed to get better.
So completely different interpretations of the same event.
Again.
Yeah.
And it goes to show just how complex their relationship was.
Absolutely. And how much their individual experiences shaped their perceptions of reality.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's do a little bit of background on Debbie herself.
Yeah, good idea.
She was actually born on a military base in Kansas back in 1955.
Okay.
Her parents were Biddy Hickson and Bob Nelson.
Interesting.
Right. And she had all sorts of different jobs throughout her life. She even owned a limousine company at one point. Yeah. Wild, right? But here's another interesting tidbit. She actually went by Debbie Mathers when Eminem was born. But once he became famous and all this drama started playing out in the media, she switched back to using her maiden name, Debbie Nelson.
Maybe to distance herself a bit.
Could be. And of course, she leaves behind her sons, Marshall and Nathan, and her grandchildren, Haley Jade, Elena Marie, and Stevie Lane.
A whole family impacted by this complex story.
It's easy to get caught up in the celebrity gossip, you know?
For sure.
But at the end of the day, this is a real family with a really complicated, sometimes painful history.
This deep dive makes you realize that truth can be subjective.
Totally.
Especially when you're talking about family dynamics.
And it makes you think, how much do those public narratives, the stories we tell about ourselves and others, how much do those actually shape our relationships? And can we ever truly understand someone else's truth, especially within a family where memories and interpretations can clash so dramatically?
It definitely leaves us with a lot to ponder.
It does. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been an emotional roller coaster, that's for sure.
It has.
And I think we all learned a thing or two about family, truth, and the complexities of human relationships.
I know I did.
Me too. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those conversations going.
Great advice.